Two lives, two secrets, and one shocking truth. A maid stumbles upon the hidden past of a billionaire while a struggling mother uncovers a family connection she never expected. Lena Thompson was an ordinary young woman trying to make ends meet for herself and her younger sister, Emma. The weight of responsibility was a constant companion, but Lena always faced it with a determined spirit. Working long hours at various jobs, she had mastered the art of juggling everything life threw her way. However, nothing could have prepared her for the job offer she would receive at the grand Blackwood estate. As a maid in the extravagant mansion of Blackwood Enterprises, Lena found herself surrounded by opulence and beauty she could never have imagined. Yet, the grandeur of the estate was always tainted by an unspoken tension. Her employer, the enigmatic CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, Vincent Blackwood, remained a mystery. The mansion, with its long hallways and vast rooms, felt strangely lifeless despite its wealth, and Vincent, tall, with dark features and a sharp jawline, rarely showed his face, leaving only whispers in his wake. Lena felt both out of place and oddly compelled to work for him. She had heard rumors about Vincent's cold demeanor and unapproachable nature. Still, she was determined to support Emma, who had big dreams of becoming a doctor. The Blackwood estate was her ticket to securing Emma's future, even if it meant enduring the strange atmosphere that surrounded Vincent. The first days at Blackwood estate were a whirlwind for Lena. Her first encounter with Vincent was brief, yet it left an indelible mark on her. He stood at the top of the grand staircase in his impeccable suit, his icy gaze scanning the room as though he were a king surveying his domain. Despite his powerful presence, there was something undeniably distant in his eyes, as if his mind was always miles away. Lena was aware of the strict rules the estate had set for all its staff. She was expected to maintain discretion and never overstep her boundaries. Most of the servants barely exchanged more than pleasantries. There was an almost palpable divide between the workers and their employer, an invisible barrier that Lena had to respect. But as she spent more time in the house, she began to notice small, subtle hints of a person she hadn't yet met. The true Vincent Blackwood. Despite his aloofness, Lena's curiosity about Vincent started to grow. The contradiction she saw in him, the coldness masking something deeper, fascinated her. There was more to Vincent than his corporate empire. Lena was determined to uncover the mystery behind the man who lived in that vast mansion, if only to understand the strange world she had stepped into. As the weeks passed, Lena continued her duties at Blackwood estate, growing accustomed to the high expectations and the unsettling silence of the mansion. The house, despite being filled with grandeur, felt as though it was a place built to keep others at arm's length. It was large, cold, and unwelcoming, much like its owner. Vincent Blackwood was rarely seen in the common areas, preferring to stay locked away in his study or in the massive office overlooking the sprawling estate. When he did make an appearance, it was always in the form of sharp commands or cold glances, but Lena couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than the aloof CEO he presented to the world. One evening, while cleaning the grand dining room, Lena overheard a conversation between Vincent and his trusted assistant. The words were muffled, but she caught snippets about a secret and keeping it from the public. Something stirred inside her. Could it be possible that Vincent Blackwood was hiding more than just his true nature? His indifference to the world around him began to make more sense. Maybe it wasn't that he didn't care, it was that he had something to hide. The thought haunted Lena, leaving her restless at night. Lena's curiosity about Vincent Blackwood grew stronger with each passing day. There was something about the way he carried himself, something distant and guarded, that intrigued her. One night, after a long evening of cleaning the grand ballroom, Lena was tasked with serving drinks for a special event at the estate. The opulence of the event contrasted sharply with the subdued atmosphere that had enveloped the mansion for so long. Guests in tuxedos and glamorous gowns filled the room, laughing and enjoying themselves, but there was still something missing, something that Lena couldn't quite place. As she navigated through the crowd, she caught sight of Vincent standing alone by a window. The light from the chandeliers above cast soft shadows across his sharp features. For a brief moment, their eyes met. His gaze, usually so cold and distant, softened for an instant as if he too were feeling the emptiness that lingered in the air. But before Lena could make sense of the moment, Vincent quickly turned away, as if he hadn't even noticed her presence. That was when she realized something startling. It wasn't just his mysterious nature that kept Vincent apart from the world. It was his deliberate choice to remain hidden. And tonight, something was about to happen that would shatter the facade he had built around himself. The next day, Lena found herself reflecting on the events of the night before, unable to get Vincent's lingering gaze out of her mind. The grand event was still fresh in her memory, so full of excitement, yet somehow so empty. It seemed as though the entire mansion, even with all the glitter and glamour, was hiding a deeper truth. Lena couldn't help but wonder what secret Vincent was desperately trying to keep hidden. She knew that what she had overheard between him and his assistant wasn't just casual conversation. They were talking about something far more significant, something that had to do with Vincent's true identity. Despite her growing curiosity, Lena kept her distance, continuing with her work as usual. Her responsibilities increased as more guests arrived for subsequent events. But every time she crossed paths with Vincent, there was an undeniable tension between them. On one occasion, while Lena was dusting off a shelf in the library, Vincent entered the room unexpectedly. He looked at her, his expression unreadable, before quickly glancing away and walking out. His cold, businesslike demeanor was a stark contrast to the way he had looked at her just the night before. Lena felt as though she had glimpsed a side of him that he didn't want anyone to see. But why did he look at her that way? It wasn't long before the estate began to feel more like a labyrinth to Lena, its grand halls and endless rooms offering no sense of warmth or comfort. The only constant was Vincent, who seemed to lurk in the shadows, never fully present, yet always inescapably there. Lena's thoughts kept returning to the glimpse of something buried deep within him, and the more she observed him, the more she noticed small inconsistencies in his behavior. He would show up at events, briefly engage with guests, then disappear for long stretches, as if he were evading something or someone. One evening, while Lena was arranging flowers in the ballroom, she overheard another conversation between Vincent and his assistant, one that left her heart racing. Vincent's voice was lower this time, as if he didn't want anyone to hear. He was discussing something about a plan, about the ball that was approaching, where secrets would finally be revealed. The assistant's voice was anxious as she asked about his decision. Vincent responded sharply, his words full of finality. "Tonight is the night. Everything ends tonight." The weight of those words settled into Lena's chest. What was going to happen that night? And why was Vincent so determined to keep it a secret? The answers seemed just out of her reach, but she was getting closer to uncovering them. The days leading up to the ball were a blur of preparations, both for the mansion and for Lena herself. She could sense the tension in the air, like a storm waiting to break. The staff buzzed with activity, setting up extravagant decorations, preparing lavish meals, and rehearsing every detail of the evening's grand entrance. Meanwhile, Lena's curiosity about Vincent deepened. She spent her free moments studying him from afar, trying to piece together the mystery behind his sudden change in demeanor. At one point, she caught him standing by a window, staring out into the garden. His expression was soft, almost pained. For a brief moment, he seemed like a completely different person, the business mogul facade slipping away. She felt a surge of empathy toward him, but it was quickly replaced by her need for answers. She had to understand what was going on. On the night of the ball, as the guests began to arrive, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. It was a grand occasion, full of whispers, laughter, and a sense of excitement that hung in the air. Lena, busy with her duties, caught glimpses of Vincent moving around the ballroom. His interactions were brief, cold, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Then the moment arrived. She saw it. The truth about Vincent's identity was about to be revealed, and it was all unfolding right before her eyes. Lena's heart raced as she continued to serve drinks to the guests, her mind unable to focus on anything other than the unsettling feeling in her gut. She kept her distance from Vincent, but as the night went on, she couldn't shake the sensation that something was different. As the clock struck midnight, a hush fell over the crowd, and a hush fell over Vincent as well. He stood near the grand staircase, looking every bit the powerful CEO. But Lena saw something in his eyes, a flash of recognition when he locked eyes with her across the ballroom. It was as if a silent understanding passed between them. But what was it? Suddenly the doors to the grand ballroom opened and a figure stepped inside. The crowd went silent. It wasn't just anyone. It was a woman, a figure from Vincent's past. She wore a striking red gown, her presence commanding attention. Vincent's expression shifted at the sight of her, his usual cool demeanor replaced with something altogether different. Guilt, maybe even regret. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She realized then that she was witnessing more than just a ball. This was a moment of reckoning for Vincent, and whatever happened next would change everything. The woman in the red gown, later identified as Victoria Sinclair, strode into the room with a commanding presence. Whispers rippled through the crowd as her sharp gaze scanned the sea of faces, eventually settling on Vincent. There was an air of tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Lena, standing on the sidelines, watched the scene unfold with bated breath. Victoria's expression was unreadable, but her arrival clearly disrupted the carefully curated image Vincent had been projecting. As Victoria approached, Vincent's usual composure began to crack. He greeted her with a measured politeness, but Lena, observing intently, could see the strain in his posture. Their exchange was brief, but laced with an unspoken history. Victoria's mere presence seemed to unravel the threads of the evening's pomp and splendor, leaving behind a raw vulnerability in Vincent that Lena had never seen before. In the midst of the ballroom's elegant chaos, Lena's curiosity deepened. She couldn't help but wonder who this woman was, and what connection she had to Vincent. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, and Lena felt herself being drawn deeper into a web of secrets she was only beginning to unravel. As the night progressed, the tension between Vincent and Victoria became palpable. They retreated to a quieter corner of the ballroom, their conversation growing more intense with each passing moment. Though Lena couldn't hear their words, their body language spoke volumes. Vincent looked torn, his guarded demeanor slipping to reveal a man grappling with emotions he could no longer suppress. Meanwhile, Lena's duties kept her weaving through the crowd, but she found herself glancing over at them repeatedly. It was as if she was witnessing a pivotal moment, one that carried the weight of years of unspoken truths. Victoria's piercing gaze occasionally swept across the room, and Lena felt a chill each time it landed on her. Just as Lena was serving another tray of champagne, a butler discreetly handed her a note. The elegant script read, "Meet me in the library." Confused and apprehensive, she glanced toward Vincent, who gave her a subtle nod from across the room. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. What could he possibly want to discuss with her in private? With trembling hands, Lena excused herself from her duties and made her way toward the library, the weight of the evening pressing down on her shoulders. In the days following the ball, the grand mansion transformed from a symbol of loneliness to a place of tentative beginnings. Lena found herself walking through the vast corridors, no longer as a maid, but as someone searching for answers. Vincent, determined to prove his sincerity, began reaching out to her in small but meaningful ways. One afternoon, Lena discovered a small box waiting for her on a table in the study. Inside was a collection of photographs, images of her mother from her youth, letters Vincent had never been able to send, and even a small locket with her name engraved on the back. It was a gesture that caught Lena off guard, stirring emotions she had tried to bury. Meanwhile, the staff in the mansion seemed to undergo a change as well. Mr. Caldwell, the stern butler, approached Lena with a rare softness in his voice, acknowledging her newfound place in Vincent's life. "It seems the house finally has some warmth," he said, offering a faint smile. As the days passed, Lena found herself drawn into Vincent's efforts to mend the broken bridge between them. Yet the scars of the past still lingered, making her question whether forgiveness was truly possible. Vincent, on the other hand, embarked on a personal journey of redemption. He began attending charity events and using his influence to support causes he had once ignored. Lena noticed the subtle changes in him, the way he softened around the staff, the way he listened intently when she spoke about her childhood, and the way he tried to bond with her in quiet, unassuming ways. One evening, Lena joined Vincent at a local children's shelter he had decided to fund. Watching him interact with the children, she saw a side of him she hadn't expected. A man trying to make amends not just for his mistakes with her, but for a lifetime of misplaced priorities. Despite these efforts, Lena's heart remained guarded. The wounds of abandonment couldn't be healed overnight. Yet, seeing Vincent's transformation stirred a flicker of hope. Could it be possible for the father she had longed for to truly be a part of her life? As she walked through the shelter that evening, a little girl tugged on Lena's hand and smiled up at her. The innocence in the child's eyes reminded her of the family she had always yearned for. Perhaps, she thought, the future held a chance for something new. Back at the mansion, Lena found herself reflecting on everything that had transpired. The memories of her childhood, the loneliness, the unanswered questions, and the yearning for a father still weighed heavily on her heart. Yet, Vincent's earnest attempts to reconcile were undeniable. He had opened up his life and heart in ways she had never thought possible. The library was dimly lit, the soft glow of the chandelier casting long shadows on the walls lined with books. Lena stepped inside cautiously, her heart thudding in her chest. Vincent stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the backdrop of the moonlit garden. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, his face etched with a complexity of emotions Lena couldn't fully decipher: regret, vulnerability, and something else she couldn't place. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice low but steady. Lena stayed silent, waiting for him to explain. Vincent gestured to an ornate desk where a leather-bound album lay open. She stepped closer and looked down to see photographs, images of a younger Vincent smiling warmly alongside a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Victoria. But what caught Lena's attention was a smaller photograph tucked into the corner, depicting a young girl, herself. Her breath caught as the realization hit her like a wave. Vincent's voice broke through her shock. "That's you, isn't it? I wasn't sure until tonight." He paused as if grappling with his next words. "Lena, you're my daughter." The words hung in the air, heavy and life-altering. Lena's world spun as she tried to process Vincent's revelation. She stumbled back a step, her mind racing through the fragments of her life that now took on an entirely new meaning. Questions surged to the forefront. How was this possible? Why had she never known? And why now, at this very moment, did he choose to reveal the truth? Vincent began to explain, his voice carrying a mixture of guilt and longing. He spoke of a love affair with Lena's mother, Sophia, a woman he had adored but had been forced to part from due to family pressures and societal expectations. When Sophia left, she had been pregnant, but Vincent never knew. It wasn't until recently, when he recognized Lena's striking resemblance to her mother, that the pieces began to fall into place. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as anger, confusion, and an inexplicable sense of loss flooded her heart. She turned away, her voice trembling as she spoke. "You had all these years to find me. Why now?" Vincent's face fell, his guilt evident. "I didn't know, Lena. And when I did, I didn't know how to reach out, or if I even had the right to." Lena stood frozen, caught between the father she never knew she had and the life she thought she understood. The air in the library felt thick, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved pain. Vincent stepped closer, his expression pleading as he continued to explain. He spoke of sleepless nights, haunted by the possibility of having a daughter he'd never known. "I thought I was protecting you," he said, his voice breaking. "Your mother left to give you a better life, far away from the complications of mine. I never wanted my world to consume yours." Lena turned sharply, her voice rising with emotion. "Protecting me? By abandoning me? By letting me grow up thinking I had no one?" The years of struggle, the lonely nights, the unanswered questions, they all surged to the surface, spilling out in a torrent of anger and heartbreak. Vincent didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded, acknowledging the weight of her words. "You're right. I failed you. I should have tried harder. But please believe me, Lena. I want to make things right, if you'll let me." For the first time, Lena saw not the powerful CEO, but a man stripped of his armor, raw and exposed. Yet the pain of his absence lingered, making her wonder if she could ever truly forgive him. As the tension between them simmered, a commotion from the ballroom shattered the moment. Both turned to see Victoria storming into the library, her face pale and her expression one of fury. She had overheard the conversation. This can't be true," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You're lying, Vincent. You wouldn't throw everything away for her." Lena recoiled at the venom in Victoria's voice, but Vincent's reaction was swift and decisive. "Enough, Victoria," he said sharply, his tone commanding. "This isn't about the company, the image, or anything else. This is about my daughter." Victoria's expression twisted with disbelief and betrayal. "Your daughter?" she spat. "Do you realize what this will do to us, to your reputation?" But Vincent didn't waver. He stepped between Lena and Victoria, his voice firm. "For once in my life, I'm not concerned about my reputation. This is my chance to finally be the father I failed to be." Lena watched the scene unfold, her emotions swirling in a whirlwind of shock, pain, and tentative hope. For years, she had felt invisible, unseen by the world. Now, in this moment, Vincent's words seemed to shine a light on a future she never thought possible. One evening, Lena stumbled upon Vincent in his study, staring at an old photo of her mother. He didn't notice her at first, lost in thought as he traced the edges of the picture. The image of him, vulnerable and remorseful, struck her deeply. She realized that while her pain was immense, Vincent carried his own burden of regret, and perhaps they were both searching for the same thing: peace. Inspired by a sense of possibility, Lena began to test the waters of this new relationship. She allowed herself to share stories of her mother and her childhood, small moments that began to weave a fragile bond between them. Vincent listened intently, his expression a mixture of sorrow and hope. The walls between them began to crumble, replaced by cautious understanding. Meanwhile, the mansion itself seemed to come alive with the energy of their growing connection. The staff, who had grown accustomed to a cold and distant household, began to smile more often, their spirits lifted by the changes in Vincent and Lena. One afternoon, Lena noticed Vincent working alongside the gardeners, a sight that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. He was no longer the aloof CEO she had first encountered. Instead, he was a man trying to rebuild his life, piece by piece. Lena couldn't help but feel a glimmer of admiration for his determination. At the same time, Vincent began including Lena in decisions that extended beyond their personal relationship. He invited her to be part of his philanthropic projects, valuing her input and showing her that she had a place in his world. It was a gesture that did not go unnoticed. For Lena, these moments felt like the beginning of something new, an opportunity to reshape her life and find healing in the most unexpected of places. As she watched Vincent transform before her eyes, she began to realize that perhaps forgiveness wasn't just for him, it was for herself too. As one chapter closed, another was just beginning. While the revelations at Blackwood Estate had reshaped Lena's world, Miles away, in a different corner of the city, another life was on the verge of transformation. A lonely millionaire and a determined young girl were about to cross paths in a way that would change them both forever. In the heart of Chicago, amidst its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, lived Jonathan Miller, a successful but lonely entrepreneur. At 52, his achievements in the tech industry had brought him wealth beyond imagination, a sprawling mansion, luxury cars, and countless accolades. His lavish lifestyle often masked a void he couldn't ignore, a lingering regret of choices made, paths not taken, and relationships left behind. In a modest corner of the city, the life of Emily Carter couldn't have been more different. At just 9 years old, Emily embodied resilience. Her world revolved around a small, weathered house she shared with her widowed mother, Rachel. Struggling to make ends meet, Rachel worked tirelessly as a seamstress, her hands worn from stitching hope into every garment. Emily, bright-eyed and full of dreams, clung to her mother's promise. "Education is the key, sweetheart. It will open doors I could never walk through." But the path wasn't easy. Emily's school, though filled with caring teachers, lacked resources. Textbooks were outdated. While other children carried brand new backpacks, Emily managed with a tattered hand-me-down. Yet her spirit remained unbroken. At night, under the glow of a flickering lamp, she'd lose herself in stories of inventors and dreamers, vowing to one day change her family's fate. The threads of their worlds crossed one rainy evening. Jonathan, returning from yet another monotonous charity gala, found himself stalled at a red light in a quieter part of the city. As the rain poured, his eyes caught a small figure on the sidewalk, a young girl clutching a soaked school bag, struggling to shield a stack of papers from the downpour. The sight stirred something in him. It wasn't pity. It was recognition, a reminder of his younger sister, Sophie, who had passed away before realizing her dreams. Unable to ignore the ache in his chest, Jonathan rolled down the window. "Hey there, do you need some help?" he called out. Emily hesitated, her mother's warnings about strangers echoing in her mind. But something about the man's kind eyes disarmed her fear. "I am just trying to keep my homework dry," she replied, her voice trembling. Jonathan's heart ached at the simplicity of her struggling moment that would become the start of an unlikely bond. Jonathan couldn't drive away. His car, with its leather seats and quiet luxury, felt suffocating compared to the raw determination he saw in Emily. Stepping out into the rain, he offered her an umbrella. "Let me drive you home. This weather isn't safe," he said, his voice steady but gentle. Emily hesitated, then nodded, sensing no malice in his intentions. As they drove through the narrow streets leading to her neighborhood, Jonathan noticed the worn houses and dimly lit roads. When they arrived at Emily's home, Rachel, surprised but wary, met them at the door. "Thank you for bringing her back safely," she said, her voice polite but guarded. Emily, always earnest, interjected, "Mom, he helped me save my homework." Jonathan smiled and replied, "Your daughter's got a good head on her shoulders. She'll go far." Rachel managed a small smile, though the weight of their daily struggles never left her eyes. That night, as Jonathan sat in his study, Emily's determined face stayed with him. He found himself thinking of Sophie, how she'd once dreamed of becoming a teacher, and how the financial hardships of their youth had stolen that dream. Could helping Emily be a chance to right some of the wrongs of his past? Days turned into weeks, and Jonathan found himself visiting Emily's neighborhood more often. Under the pretense of donating to a local library, he learned more about Emily's brilliance and Rachel's quiet sacrifice. One day, at the community center, he overheard Emily telling her friends about a scholarship opportunity at a prestigious private. "But it's so expensive," Emily said, her tone filled with, "Mom says we can't afford even the application." That night, Jonathan made a decision. He arranged a meeting with Rachel, bringing an air of humility. "Your daughter has potential. I'd like to sponsor her education." Rachel's initial reaction was disbelief, followed by cautious gratitude. "Why would you do this for us?" Jonathan paused, then replied, "Let's just say someone once helped me when I needed it most. Consider this my way of paying it forward." Despite her initial hesitation, Rachel agreed, recognizing that this opportunity could change Emily's life. Emily, overjoyed, threw her arms around her. It was a moment of hope, a new chapter in their lives, written by an unlikely benefactor. Emily's first day at her new school, Crescent Academy, was a whirlwind of emotions. The sprawling campus, with its polished hallways and towering windows, was a stark contrast to the small, worn-down public school she had attended. As she clutched her new school bag, an unexpected gift from Jonathan, she felt both awe and anxiety. The other children, dressed in crisp uniforms, whispered as she passed, their curious eyes following her every move. "Don't let them intimidate you," Jonathan had told her that morning, his voice filled with encouragement. "You've earned your place here." Those words echoed in her mind as she entered her first class, her heart pounding. To her surprise, the teacher, Mrs. Carter, greeted her warmly. "Welcome, Emily. We're excited to have you join us," she said, her kind smile easing Emily's nerves. But the day wasn't without its challenges. At lunch, a group of students giggled as they whispered about her shoe is scuffed and a little too big. Emily gritted her teeth, determined not to let their words dampen her spirit. She had promised her mother and Jonathan that she would make the most of this opportunity, no matter how hard it got. Meanwhile, Jonathan kept a watchful eye from a distance, working closely with Rachel to ensure Emily had everything she needed. Their conversations grew deeper with time, revealing the extent of Rachel's sacrifices. "She's my everything," Rachel confided one evening, her voice breaking with emotion. "I've never been able to give her much, but I've always wanted her to have a chance to escape this life." As weeks turned into months, Emily began to find her footing at Crescent Academy. Her natural brilliance shone through, impressing her teachers and slowly earning the respect of her classmates. In science class, she built a solar-powered water purifier for a school competition, earning first place. The headmaster himself commended her during assembly, calling her an inspiration, yet not everyone was supportive. Victoria, the daughter of a wealthy board member, saw Emily as a threat. "She doesn't belong here," Victoria would mutter, rallying her clique to make life difficult for Emily. They'd knock over her books in the hallway, spread cruel rumors, and mock her humble beginnings. Despite their cruelty, Emily remained resilient. She channeled her frustration into her studies, knowing that her success was the best response she could give. One evening, as Jonathan sat in his study, an email from Emily's school caught his attention. It was a progress report detailing her achievements and challenges. Reading about her struggles with bullying stirred something deep within him. Memories of his own childhood flooded back, being teased for his shabby clothes and stammer, a sharp contrast to the confident man he had become. He knew the pain of being an outsider, and he vowed to do more to support Emily. The next day, Jonathan visited the school unannounced. Sitting down with the headmaster, he expressed concern about the environment Emily faced. "She's one of the brightest students you have," he said firmly, "and she deserves every opportunity to succeed." The headmaster assured Jonathan that they'd address the issue, but he knew that real change would come from empowering Emily, not just shielding her. Jonathan began mentoring Emily more directly, sharing stories of his struggles and how he overcame them. "People will always try to tear you down," he told her one evening. "The trick is to remember why you started in the first place. Use their doubt as fuel for your fire." Emily listened intently, her admiration for Jonathan growing with each word. For the first time, she saw him not just as a benefactor, but as someone who truly understood her journey. As Emily grew more confident, she began to stand up for herself. During a debate competition, where she was paired against Victoria, she delivered a speech so compelling that even the teachers applauded. "It's not where you start that defines you," she concluded, her voice steady and full of conviction. "It's the choices you make and the effort you put in that truly matter." The audience erupted in applause, and Victoria, for once, was left speechless. Despite her triumphs, Emily remained grounded. She often spent weekends helping her mother with sewing projects, insisting on contributing to their household. "I don't ever want to forget where I came from," she told Rachel one afternoon. Meanwhile, Jonathan's involvement in her life grew deeper. He started a scholarship program at Crescent Academy in Emily's name, ensuring other talented children from underprivileged backgrounds could access the same opportunities. One rainy afternoon, Emily and Jonathan visited the local community center, where she gave a talk to younger children. Sharing her journey, she said, "Dreams aren't meant to stay in your head, they're meant to be chased." As she looked at the hopeful faces in the crowd, she realized how far she'd command, how much further she wanted to go. As Emily's confidence grew, so did her aspirations. She began dreaming of attending one of the country's top universities, a goal that seemed almost impossible just a year ago. Late one evening, she sat with Jonathan in his library, flipping through a brochure for Princeton University.
Do you think I have a chance?
She asked. Jonathan smiled warmly. You have more than a chance, Emily. You have everything it takes to succeed. Encouraged by his words, Emily worked tirelessly to maintain her stellar grades and prepare for her applications. She spent hours perfecting her essays, writing about her journey and the lessons she had learned. Every challenge taught me resilience. Every kindness reminded me of hope, she wrote. Her teachers, recognizing her potential, rallied around her, offering guidance and recommendation. Even Rachel found herself dreaming of a brighter future for her daughter, one filled with opportunities she had never dared to imagine. Yet, life wasn't without its setbacks. One day, Rachel fell ill and medical bills began piling up. Emily was torn between her studies and caring for her mother. Seeing her struggle, Jonathan stepped in, ensuring Rachel received the best care. Let me take care of this. His unwavering support gave her the strength to keep going, even in the face of adversity. Months later, Emily's hard work bore fruit. She received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities, including her dream school. Overwhelmed with emotion, she ran to her mother, clutching the letter. Rachel embraced her tightly, pride and gratitude shining in her eyes. Jonathan, too, was moved by her achievement. This is just the beginning, he said. As graduation approached, Emily began preparing her valedictorian speech, determined to make it a moment to I want to thank everyone who believed in me, she told Jonathan during one of their talks. Especially you. None of this would have been possible without your kindness. Jonathan brushed off the praise with a modest smile, but deep down, he felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. The day of the ceremony arrived, bringing together students, teachers, and proud family. As Emily donned her cap and gown, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come from the rain-soaked streets to the grand stage where she now stood. As she prepared to deliver her speech, she spotted Jonathan in the crowd, his expression one of quiet pride. She knew this moment wasn't just hers, it belonged to everyone who had helped her along. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as Emily stepped onto the stage. The graduating class, dressed in vibrant robes, sat in neat rows, their faces filled with anticipation. Parents and teachers watched from the packed audience, cameras poised to capture every moment. Standing at the podium, Emily took a deep breath, clutching the edges tightly to steady herself. She had rehearsed her speech countless times, but now, under the bright lights, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on her. Good evening, everyone, she began, her voice clear but slightly trembling. Today we celebrate not just our achievements but the journey that brought us here. As she spoke, her words carried the authenticity of someone who had fought for every step forward. She shared stories of resilience, moments of doubt, and the unwavering love of a mother who sacrificed everything for her. My mother, she said, her voice breaking slightly, taught me that no dream is too big if you have the courage to chase it. Jonathan watched from the audience, his heart swelling with pride. He had attended countless events in his life, from lavish galas to boardroom triumphs, but none had moved him like this. As Emily's words filled the room, he felt a deep connection to her story, a reminder of his own struggles and the people who had once lifted him when he was at his lowest. Then, Emily turned to Jonathan, her eyes locking with his. Here is someone else I need to thank, she said, her voice steady, but filled with emotion. The audience turned their heads, curious to see who she was addressing. A man who stepped into my life when I least expected it. A man who believed in me when I didn't even know how to dream. Mr. Jonathan Miller, you've been more than a mentor. You've been a father to me. Jonathan froze, unprepared for the surge of emotions that followed. A murmur spread through the crowd as Emily continued, recounting how Jonathan's kindness had changed her life. Because of you, she said, her voice cracking, I stand here today, ready to take on the world. She paused, her eyes glistening. And because of you, I've learned that success is not just about what you achieve, but about who you bring with you along the way. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Tears welled in Jonathan's eyes, and he quickly wiped them away, his usually composed demeanor faltering. Rachel, sitting beside him, reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you, she whispered, her gratitude echoing Emily's words. At that moment, Jonathan realized the profound impact one decision had made not just on Emily's life, but on his own. As Emily continued her speech, she invited the audience into the most vulnerable parts of her journey. She shared stories of self-doubt, the sting of being teased for her worn shoes, and the nights she stayed awake, wondering if her dreams were too big for someone like her. But then, she said, her voice growing stronger, I realized something important. Strength isn't about having everything. It's about using what you have to build something greater. The audience was captivated. Even the students who had once dismissed her listened intently, their expressions softening. Emily's courage in laying bare her struggles turned the auditorium into a shared space of reflection. Parents squeezed their children's hands, and teachers exchanged knowing glances. She ended with a challenge to her peers. Let's not just succeed for ourselves, she urged. Let's make a promise to give back, to lift others as we climb. Because at the end of the day, the most valuable legacy we leave behind is how we've impacted others. Thunderous applause erupted, and Emily stepped back from the podium, her chest heaving with the weight of emotion and relief. As the ceremony concluded, Emily joined her classmates in tossing their caps into the air, laughter and cheers echoing throughout the hall. Jonathan, watching from the sidelines, felt a mix of joy and bittersweet pride. He had seen Emily transform from a shy, rain-soaked girl clutching her homework to a confident young woman who had inspired an entire audience. After the ceremony, Emily found Jonathan in the crowd. "Mr. Miller," she called, her voice cutting through the chatter. He turned, his face lighting up as he saw her running toward him. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him, the hug speaking volumes of her gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jonathan held her for a moment, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "Emily, you did this. All I did was open the door. You walked through it." Rachel joined them, her eyes glistening with tears. "We're so grateful, Jonathan," she said. "You gave her a chance when no one else did." Nearby, Emily's classmates and teachers watched the scene unfold, many wiping away tears. The story of Emily and Jonathan wasn't just a tale of kindness, it was a reminder of the extraordinary things that can happen when one person dares to believe in another. As the evening wore on, a small reception followed the ceremony. Emily stood by Jonathan and Rachel, surrounded by teachers, classmates, and even the headmaster, who all came to congratulate her. Victoria, the girl who had once tried to make her life difficult, approached nervously. "Emily," she began, her voice hesitant, "I just wanted to say, your speech was amazing. I misjudged you." Emily offered a kind smile, her humility shining through. "Thank you, Victoria," she replied. "It means a lot to hear that." For a moment, the animosity between them melted away, replaced by mutual respect. Jonathan, watching the exchange, felt a renewed sense of hope. Emily's kindness and resilience had transformed not just her life, but the perspectives of those around her. Later, the headmaster raised a toast. "To Emily Carter," he declared, "a shining example of what determination, grace, and the power of a helping hand can achieve. Her story reminds us all why we do what we do." The room erupted into cheers and applause, and Emily, though overwhelmed, felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. As the reception wound down, Jonathan found himself standing alone by the window, looking out at the city lights. Emily approached quietly, holding a small envelope. "I wanted to give you this," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a simple handwritten note. "Dear Mr. Miller, you didn't just change my life, you gave me the courage to believe in myself. Every step I take forward is because of you. Thank you for everything. Love, Emily." Jonathan's eyes filled with tears as he read the words. He looked at Emily, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've given me more than I ever gave you," he said. "You reminded me of what truly matters." As they stood together, the world seemed to pause. Jonathan realized that this wasn't just Emily's victory, it was theirs. In helping her, he had found a sense of purpose he never thought possible. And for Emily, the journey had only just begun. In the weeks following her graduation, Emily's life became a whirlwind of activity. She prepared for her move to Princeton, filling her days with packing, orientation meetings, and tearful goodbyes. Rachel, though brimming with pride, struggled to contain her emotions. "It feels like just yesterday you were holding my hand on your way to your first day of school," she said one evening, her voice thick with nostalgia. Jonathan, ever the steady presence, continued to support them. He gifted Emily a sleek laptop for her studies and even helped Rachel navigate the logistics of managing their home without Emily. "You are not losing her," Jonathan reassured Rachel during one of their conversations. "You've given her wings. Now it's time to watch her soar." Meanwhile, Emily's story began to ripple through the community. Her achievements became a beacon of hope for other students facing similar struggles. Crescent Academy honored her by creating the Emily Carter Scholarship Fund, ensuring that future students from underserved backgrounds could follow in her footsteps. Jonathan, moved by the initiative, matched their donation, doubling the funds. Emily also made it a point to give back. Before leaving for Princeton, she organized a small workshop at the community center, teaching children how to write compelling essays and apply for scholarships. "If I can do it, so can you," she told them, her voice filled with conviction. The children, many of whom came from difficult circumstances, looked at her with wide-eyed admiration. At home, Rachel prepared for her new chapter as well. Jonathan had quietly arranged for her to join a sewing cooperative, where her skills could be used to generate a steady income. "I don't know how to thank you," Rachel told him one evening. Jonathan simply smiled and said, "You've already done so much. This is just a small way to lighten your..." As Emily's departure date approached, the three of them, Emily, Rachel, and Jonathan, shared one last dinner. The mood was bittersweet, filled with laughter, memories, and promises to stay connected. "I'll make you both proud," Emily said, her voice trembling with emotion. Jonathan raised his glass. "You already have, Emily. You already have." The day Emily left for Princeton was a mix of excitement and tears. At the train station, Rachel held her daughter close, whispering words of encouragement. "Remember, no matter how far you go, home is always here," she said, her voice trembling. Jonathan, standing nearby, handed Emily a small leather-bound note. "For your thoughts, your dreams, or anything else you need to put into words," he explained. Emily flipped through the first few blank pages and noticed a handwritten note inside. "Keep believing in yourself. The world needs your light." She looked up at Jonathan, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "I'll make sure this notebook is full of good things," she promised. As the train began to pull away, Emily waved from the window, her face a mixture of determination and sadness. Rachel and Jonathan stood side by side, watching until the train disappeared from view. "She's going to do great things," Rachel said, more to herself than anyone else. Jonathan nodded. "She already has." In the months that followed, Emily's updates from Princeton became a source of joy for both Rachel and Jonathan. She thrived in her new environment, joining student organizations, excelling in her classes, and even securing an internship with a nonprofit. "It's everything I dreamed it would be," she wrote in one letter. "But no matter how far I go, I carry both of you with me." Back home, Rachel's life took a positive turn. The sewing cooperative became a source of stability and camaraderie, and she even started saving for her first vacation, a dream she'd long put aside. Jonathan, inspired by Emily's journey, expanded his scholarship program to include mentorship opportunities, ensuring students received not only financial support but also guidance. One evening, as Jonathan reviewed updates from the scholarship program, he received an email from Emily. Attached was a photo of her standing in front of a university banner, holding an award for academic excellence. Her message was simple but heartfelt. "This is because of you. Thank you for believing in me." Jonathan leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. For the first time in years, he felt not just successful, but truly fulfilled. Years later, Emily returned to Chicago as the shy, rain-soaked girl clutching her homework, but as a confident young woman with a degree in hand and a mission in her heart. She had spent her time at Princeton working tirelessly, and now she was back to fulfill a promise she had made to herself, to uplift the community that had shaped her. Her first stop was the community center, where she reunited with children she had once mentored. Now, she brought not just words of encouragement, but actionable plans. With Jonathan's continued support, Emily launched an initiative to provide tutoring, college prep resources, and even small scholarships for underprivileged youth. "This isn't just my dream," she said during the program's launch. Rachel, watching from the crowd, felt a deep sense of pride. Emily's success wasn't just hers, it was a shared victory for all who had believed in her. Later that evening, she told Jonathan, "You didn't just help her, you gave her the tools to help others." That's the kind of legacy most people can only dream of. Meanwhile, Jonathan found himself reflecting on how much his own life had changed since that rainy evening years ago. His once empty mansion was now filled with activity space regularly used for community events, mentorship gatherings, and even small family dinners with Emily and Rachel. It no longer felt like a symbol of isolation, but a hub of connection and purpose. One evening, during a quiet moment on the mansion's balcony, Jonathan spoke with Emily. "You've given me more than I ever gave you," he admitted, his voice tinged with emotion. "Watching you grow has been the greatest gift of my life." Emily smiled, placing a hand on his. "And you've shown me that kindness has no limits. I hope to carry that forward in everything I do." As the city lights twinkled in the distance, they both felt the enormity of what they had built together, not just a life-changing journey for Emily, but a legacy of hope and compassion that would ripple far beyond them. Months later, Emily organized a special event to honor the people who had made her journey possible. Held at the community center, the evening was a celebration of resilience, generosity, and the power of belief. Teachers, mentors, and friends gathered to hear Emily speak. "This isn't just my story," she said, her voice steady and full of warmth. "It's the story of what happens when people come together to make a difference. It's a reminder that no act of kindness is ever too small." Jonathan was invited to the stage, where Emily presented him with an award engraved with the words, "To the man who turned dreams into possibilities." Overwhelmed, Jonathan accepted it with a heartfelt speech of his own. "I started this journey thinking I was helping Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But the truth is, she helped me rediscover the meaning of life." As the audience applauded, Rachel, seated in the front row, wiped away tears. The moment felt like the culmination of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every ounce of love she had poured into raising Emily. In the years that followed, Emily's impact continued to grow. She became a sought-after speaker, inspiring audiences with her story of perseverance and hope. Her initiative at the community center blossomed into a citywide program, helping countless children pursue their dreams. Rachel, now retired, often volunteered at the center, sharing her wisdom with young parents. As for Jonathan, his life became a testament to the transformative power of connection. His mansion, once a symbol of solitude, became a beacon of generosity, hosting annual fundraisers and mentorship dinners. He often joked that he had gone from a solitary businessman to a proud member of an extended family he never knew he needed. One evening, as Emily prepared for a televised interview, she and Jonathan sat together, reminiscing about their journey. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we hadn't met that night in the rain?" she asked, her tone contemplative. Jonathan smiled, shaking his head. "I don't dwell on what might have been," he replied. "I am just grateful for what is." As the camera crew arrived and the lights turned on, Emily took her place on stage, ready to share her story with the world. Watching from behind the scenes, Jonathan and Rachel exchanged a proud glance. Their journey had come full circle, proving that with love, perseverance, and a little help, even the smallest spark could light up the darkest night.